So for our case study, we're going to talk about how the cloud kind of integrates into this and what steps we can take to make sure that our cloud log data is accounted for, is being used appropriately, and is available if we need it. So the company that we were working for was, we'll call them a professional services company. Names are changed to protect the innocent. They had a single user account compromised through a phishing email, which is very common in cloud-based email systems. The one compromised account was then used to compromise multiple other accounts inside of the network, although at that time there was some question as to how many actual accounts had been compromised. IT staff performed their own initial investigation and determined that 17 accounts had been compromised. In the final write-up that they did, the attorneys that were working with them and the cyber insurance that were working with them looked at their conclusions and found their conclusions to be lacking in a lot of detail. And so they pulled in us to do a follow-up investigation and see if we could, at the very least, verify the conclusions they had come to. This is where the problems really started. So the IT staff did not actually retain any of the log data that they had pulled down for their investigation. They had looked at it through the Microsoft Office 365 Audit Center. They had taken a couple screenshots of some reports they had pulled back, but none of that data was actually retained and stored so we could access it later on down the road. Now, they had an Office 365 E3 tenant. In Office 365 E3, you have a default 90-day retention period for your audit log data. The case was turned over to us 94 days after the initial access had happened. So there was a bit of a lag in information between when we were able to start investigating through the audit logs and when the actual information of note would have been recorded. There are some other steps we could take using things like eDiscovery and mail trace records to come up with a pretty decent approximation for the activity that had been undertaken, but it would have been much easier and faster to just have that log data available. We were able to get a lot of the data back out from the Office 365 tenant for the email accounts that we were looking for, and we came to a pretty significantly different conclusion than the original investigators had come to. Remember, they said 17 accounts had been compromised. We were able to determine that only 9 accounts were actually compromised during this event. We were also able to identify the original phishing email and use that to identify where else in the company it had been set, who was at risk because they clicked on the phishing email, who had then followed the link out to the phishing website, and then we were able to utilize similar indicators of compromise between the accounts that we knew were taken over to basically determine that other accounts were not compromised. They were things like hotspot activity or logging in from a home computer that we could rule out. No evidence of cloud document access was also identified. That was a huge thing for this client. They had a lot of sensitive data in their SharePoint, wanted to make sure that hadn't been accessed or exfiltrated, and we could see pretty conclusively that it was not. And we were able to cut their eDiscovery bill by about 50 gigabytes worth of data. Now, 50 gigabytes worth of data in eDiscovery is significant. eDiscovery firms, I'm not sure if you've ever worked with one, but they charge you for investigation of this data by the gigabyte, and they are not cheap by any means. 50 gigabytes of data is a significant savings and also makes the process run a lot faster. So that was a good conclusion. We were pretty happy with that one. Obviously, we'd love to tell clients every time that nothing bad happened, but if we can at least minimize the amount of negative impact, that's going to get us all into a better position. All right, so thank you so much, everyone. Again, my name is Matt Duran, security consultant with LMG Security. If you have any questions whatsoever, please feel free to ask them. You can email me at mduran@lmgsecurity.com, follow us on Twitter, look me up on LinkedIn, and thank you again.